You ever wake up thinking your life's about to be just another Tuesday, then bam, you get a court summons for something that straight up doesn't exist? Yeah, that happened to me. And not just for any nonsense either. A pond. An invisible phantom pond in my backyard, apparently uncovered by the all-knowing eyes of Karen Whitfield, our HOA president, whose belief in satellite images rivals her faith in her own authority. You know what I mean? I'm still half convinced the universe was pulling a prank on me. Anyway, let me back up a sec. My name's Marcus Chin, and until all this, I thought the wildest thing I'd ever get from the HOA was a passive-aggressive letter about my dandelions. But this one morning, I'm shuffling through my bills, still half asleep, when I see an envelope from Whitfield and Associates. My hands start shaking because everyone in Maplewood Heights knows that when Karen's legal team gets involved, it's usually the start of a horror story. I thought maybe at worst I'd get dinged for the little crack in my driveway, but no, the letter inside reads like an environmental crime novel. According to them, I'd built a pond. Not just any pond, one with specific measurements, water capacity, and of course significant environmental impact. They demanded I drain the thing, fix my land, and fork over a hefty fine. And I'm sitting there, mouth open, coffee getting cold, just trying to remember if I'd ever sleepwalked into a Bob Vila episode and built a pond in my dreams. Spoiler, I don't have a pond. Not a bird bath, not even a plastic kiddie pool. My backyard is just sad brown grass, a couple of oak trees, and a hose that barely works. I walked out that morning scanning every inch of the yard like maybe some aquatic construction ferry came by overnight. But nope, just the same patch of dirt and old leaves I'd seen every day. But Karen didn't just bring legalese. She had evidence, a high-res Google Earth image with a big blue-green splotch circled in yellow and labeled illegal water feature. Arrow stamps, the works. For a split second, I doubted myself. Then I zoomed in. The pond was nothing more than the shadow of my grandfather's ancient oak tree, whose branches stretch out wide enough to shade half the yard in summer. You ever feel so relieved you want to laugh, but also so angry you want to scream? That was me. Thing is, Karen wasn't just overzealous. She was methodical. She'd filed the violation using the satellite image, totally ignoring or maybe not even understanding that the photo was taken in July when the tree was full of leaves. But this was January. That tree was all skeleton, no shadow. You'd think someone running an HOA would at least check the season before they went nuclear on their neighbors, right? Turns out, I wasn't the first. Word travels fast in our subdivision. The Johnsons got pushed out last year over a fence height violation, even though it matched the bylaws. The Hendersons left after endless threats about their kid's swing set, and the Martinez family don't even get me started. Karen tried to tell them their driveway was the wrong color. It's like she spun a wheel every month to decide who to terrorize next. So when the emergency HOA meeting was called to address the dangerous environmental violation, I knew I had to show up. Not because I was scared, but because I was curious just how far Karen would take this. That night I walked into the community center and felt every eye on me, some sympathetic, some annoyed, some just in it for the drama. Karen strutted in, clipboard in hand, like she was running for local dictator. You could tell she loved the spotlight, but if you look close, you'd see her hands shaking a little as she lined up her documents. She started her presentation voice all thunder and fire about hidden water features and property value risks. She even brought in 2 board members as her backup singers, but they looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She put the satellite image on the screen and spun a whole story about how I'd concealed a large pond, risking the drainage system, threatening home values, the usual apocalypse stuff. She pointed her laser at the pond, and I swear for a second I almost felt bad for her. But when it was my turn, I stood up, pulled out my phone, and calmly pointed out, "Hey, it's January. That tree is bare. There's no shadow. And what you're looking at is 6 months old. Want to come see for yourself?" The room fell silent. You could see people thinking, wait, is this really about a shadow? But Karen snapped, shouting, "You're lying. You're hiding something." Then, no joke, she called 911 right there in front of everyone, claiming I was a threat to the community's mental safety. You ever see a power trip self-destruct in real time? That was the moment. The cops showed up, Officer Rodriguez and his partner looking about as tired of HOA drama as you'd expect. They listened to Karen rant about my imaginary pond, then quietly asked to see my backyard. So we all parade over neighbors, board members, even a few curious kids, and stand there in the cold, staring at nothing but dirt and the old oak tree. Rodriguez shines his flashlight around, checks behind the shed, and finally tells Karen, "Ma'am, what you've got here is just a tree shadow. I used to be a civil engineer. This is a summer foliage shadow, not a pond." Karen just stared face white, but she kept pushing, saying I'd covered it up, filled it in, that the truth was 20 feet underground. Now here's where it gets good. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who's got more wisdom than the rest of the board combined, comes forward with a dusty old box of documents my grandfather left her. Inside is a 1950s geological survey showing our land sits on solid granite. If you wanted to dig a pond here, you'd need dynamite and a small army, not just a garden shovel. The officer reads it, nods, and tells Karen point blank it's impossible, and she might want to be careful about wasting police resources. That's when Karen's facade really started to crack. But the story wasn't done unraveling. I started digging around, looking into past HOA lawsuits, property sales, all those violations Karen had weaponized. Wouldn't you know it, every family she'd run off sold to investment companies connected to her husband. Properties flipped for fat profits. Vulnerable neighbors squeezed out by fake legal threats. With help from Dave Murphy, one of her own board members who'd finally grown a spine, I got hold of emails laying out Karen's whole playbook. She'd planned to target me months in advance, pick my house, because it sat on a corner lot perfect for commercial development if you could push the owner out. Next thing I know, the media gets involved thanks to Karen's desperate bid to control the story. Newsvan's headlines, "Engineer hides secret pond the works." She spun it as some environmental scandal, but I decided if I was going down, I'd go down swinging. I fired up a live stream, walked folks around my yard, held up the geological survey, showed police reports and those damning emails. The internet loved it. Comments rolled in, folks from all over sharing their own HOA horror stories. Even Officer Rodriguez dropped a comment backing me up, saying there's no pond, no crime, just a shadow and a misunderstanding. Suddenly the narrative shifted. People saw through Karen's act. Even more, a regional journalist called telling me my case was part of a bigger pattern, other neighborhoods facing coordinated property manipulation, with HOA officials partnering with real estate investors. The journalist team started digging, and Friday night's HOA meeting turned into a circus. Karen, still trying to save face, brought in drilling specialists to find the hidden water. They drilled for hours, nothing but granite and clay. I stood there with Mrs. Patterson's survey in one hand, Dave's emails in the other, and every neighbor watching as Karen's authority crumbled like stale bread. Finally, Mrs. Patterson stood up and called Karen out, revealing how she'd tried to bully her into selling for a third of her property's value. Dave Murphy backed her up, flashing those emails on the projector for all to see. Then Officer Rodriguez stepped forward, announced a full-blown investigation into Karen and her husband for abuse of office and real estate fraud. The reporter burst in with legal docs tracing all those investment companies straight back to Karen's husband. Karen lost it, shouting, finger-pointing, demanding someone call 911 because I'd laughed at her. The whole room burst out laughing. Finally, after months of fear, everyone could see the truth. Rodriguez deadpanned, "Ma'am, you want me to arrest someone for laughing?" Even her own board was shaking their heads. 3 months later, I'm sitting under that same oak tree watching neighborhood kids run around a space that used to be ground zero for Karen's crusade. Karen and her husband went down hard fraud charges, jail time, restitution to all the families they'd bullied out. The HOA's under new leadership now. Mrs. Patterson's president, transparency rules, no more dictator games. Dave Murphy's still there, but now he's the watchdog, not the rubber stamp. And the best part, That prime lot, Karen wanted to sell to developers. It's now Marcus Chen Memorial Park, dedicated to my grandfather and everyone who stood up against her scam. The oak tree stands undisturbed as the centerpiece, and families who were run off came back, bought their homes at fair prices, and the neighborhood's actually better for it. Officer Rodriguez still drops by, cracks a joke about winning a lawsuit with a laugh, and Mrs. Patterson always toasts to beating bullies with truth and a smile. So here's my question for you. Ever been trapped by someone abusing their little bit of power? Felt that sick pit in your stomach when you know you're right, but they've got the louder voice? You don't have to stay quiet. All it took was a few old documents, a stubborn neighbor, and a community finally saying enough. That's how you win. Let's talk about it. Where's the line between keeping order and crossing into tyranny? Who do you trust with your peace of mind? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want to hear more about ordinary folks standing up to petty tyrants, stick around, share your stories, and let's keep laughing at the ones who take themselves too seriously.